Our vocabulary is becoming smaller. Poems grow our vocabulary.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and I am here with Martin, Tanya, and returning guest. This is Kathy Becker. Kathy, it's wonderful to have you here.
It is wonderful
in
to be
Louisville
here.
On the podcast. You're in from Arizona.
Yes.
Checking on the schools division, which you lead.
Yes.
What are some of the things you're doing while you're here?
Well, I'm meeting with Ryan. We're planning some conventions and conferences for the year.
Okay.
And then just meeting in the schools division and going over all of the things that we do. Working on some special information about teacher certification and other things.
And you have a local group here in Louisville in our Memoria Press offices, but your reps are all over the country.
Yes, we are now all over the country from the Northeast, from coast to coast.
You are. We've got New York. We've got, who's in the West Coast? I didn't know you had a
So Thomas J. does the West Coast.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
That's exciting.
So it is constantly growing.
Yes. It's always good to have you here. We always try to get you on an episode when you're in town. Mm-hmm. So good to have you. Thank you for making time. Well, before we dive into today's
I guess she's
topic,
not happy to see us.
Apparently not.
I get to see you guys every day.
Hey, Jessica.
Our listeners may not know this, but we are all in the same office. Martin and I sit about a ruler's length away from each other all day long.
But I don't.
Which is quite fun because we talk about all manner of things.
Yeah. Very little having to do with what we're supposed to be doing.
Maybe I should pop in more often.
You bring your laptop up and sit between us. There's not much room, but
maybe so.
Mostly she's on the phone.
Yes.
That's right.
You are. You are on the phone.
I'm on the phone.
You are
Yes.
on the phone.
I do take a lot of calls.
I'm just running up and down the hill.
That's right. Well, let's talk about what we're reading before we get into today's topic. Kathy, did you do any reading on the plane while you were here?
I certainly did.
Okay.
Yes. And because I knew what we were going to be talking about, which is unusual.
Yeah.
It's usually spur of the moment. I actually came equipped with my 2 books, although I generally will have 4 or 5 books scattered about the house.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that it's important to be reading a lot of different things.
Mm.
So maybe you're reading a book on classical ed, you're reading a book on something religious. You always have a book of poetry, which we're going to talk about. A poem a day keeps whatever away, right? It's so important. But right now, the 2 that I chose to bring, I'm really getting into Gerard Manley Hopkins' poetry. Ooh. I think it is lovely. I am falling into him. Really enjoying it. And then Dostoevsky, because he's my friend, and Martin and I have this thing. I'm Dostoevsky, he's Tolstoy. We have this ongoing. I really do love Dostoevsky. But I'm reading Notes from Underground, which is, have you read it? It's more of it's a trudge. Huh. Because there's a lot of darkness in it. There's, he's...
in Dostoevsky, darkness?
But somebody recently that I heard said, Dostoevsky is the psychologist and Tolstoy is the sociologist.
That's pretty good.
I think that pretty much describes it.
That's one good way to explain it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm drawn to him and I enjoy him. And
just not that one so much.
Well, it's not that I don't enjoy it.
It's a slow read.
It is a slow read to consider. It's not a difficult read. It is a slow read. Mm-hmm. Whereas like Brothers K, that's later on in his life. That's the last book of his life. He's developed in his writing. And, this is earlier. It's more of a work to understand his mind.
Have you read Solzhenitsyn?
Yes.
Have you read the
Gulag Archipelago? Yes.
I bought all 3. Mm-hmm. I bought all 3 volumes, but I'm intimidated to start. Because it's so much.
Yeah. But strangely enough, growing up, my father was reading the Gulag Archipelago, and I think I was 15 when I picked it up.
Oh, wow.
And began to trudge through. But you need to realize the history of where we were in our lives at that time, right? Because we were all so young.
Yes.
We were heading toward a time when perestroika would happen. So there was a lot. And Solzhenitsyn at that time was really speaking in our country and was saying he was concerned for Russia.
And he was a recent exile, so
yes,
it was romantic, really, that he'd been left his country under threat of his life. So,
right.
When you're a teenager, that is.
And at that time, it was very well known. I mean, people were more aware of it than
in
people
our
are
generation, this has really been hitting me lately, is that for much of my life, we had missiles pointed at us and knew that the next morning we could be incinerated, but because we were in the middle of the Cold War, and to grow up under that shadow.
But here's the Russian mindset, and I mentioned it to someone recently. So, of course, my grandchildren are Russian, right? They're breaking apart the wishbone, and what do we say? The person who gets the bigger piece says, I get my wish, right? No. You know what they say in Russia? They say, I'll stand on your grave.
Okay.
So I think it's a little different, the mindset there, right? Yeah. And that's
a great
my Dostoevsky right there.
Well, the other thing about that book is Notes from the Underground is it's not a story.
No, it's not. It's first person, all of the
just him
things
thinking
inside of himself that he's struggling with.
Yeah. How about you guys? What are you reading?
I'm trying to finish Anne of Green Gables for our book group tomorrow night and thoroughly enjoying it again. I mean, it's just every other sentence is just brilliant.
Yes.
And her descriptions of the place in Avonlea are just, you could tell there's just such a love for the land. And I'm reading, our 11th grade has been challenged. Their Herculean challenge is to read Shakespeare in a year. And so I'm going to try to do it with them, but I think it may take me 2 years.
All of that?
So I read all of Shakespeare when I was in college because I had 2 semesters of Shakespeare. But I haven't really read a lot since then, except what's in our curriculum, really. So I started The Two Gentlemen of Verona last night, and I'm going to see how far I can make it. And, you have to, we've got a schedule of how much you have to read each day. So we'll see. And I'm getting ready to read the new, and I meant to start that last night, the new book by Robert George and Cornel West.
Oh, yeah.
Which I put on your desk as well.
The one about disagreements.
It's called Truth Matters.
Yeah.
Yes. And we had met Robert George. Lee and I met him several times when we were at conferences in Princeton. So I feel like I should read his book.
I saw them together live at a conference where they did that because they go around and do these little discussions between each other. Yeah.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah.
Martin, what are you reading?
Well, of course, I'm reading Dostoevsky too, but I'm reading The Idiot.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I've mentioned that before on the show. I'm still working on that. I'm about a third of the way through. I have read it before, but I wanted to, this was what I had been told was a better translation. So it's the Pavir, the newer translation.
Pavir here too. Yes.
And I'm enjoying that. But I've been so there's something you said that made me think about this, is that I really what I really need to do is read a book in the same place at about the same time. So there's certain books that I'll sit down after dinner and sit on the couch, and there's a book right there that I'll read. And then if I in the late afternoon or something, in particular if I do something for work, I go out on my porch and I'll read it there. But there's something about reading the same book in the same place
I can't believe
at the same time.
Sure.
That just, I don't know what it is, but just that association. I don't know how it works. But so I'm reading a book on Thomistic psychology.
Ooh, really?
I knew she'd say that. Is the book when I sit down after dinner and sit on the couch. Well, the chief thing to take away from that is that for Aristotle and St. Thomas, psychology was the study of the soul, because that's what the word means. Psyche, right? It's psychology is the study of the soul. That's literally what it means. And so, in modern psychology, you have a lot of psychologists who don't believe in a soul. which is sort of ironic. But I'm very much enjoying that, very intellectual book. And then The Glass Bead Game. Andrew Pudu and I do a talk every year at the conferences, at 4 or 5 conferences, the Great Homeschool conferences, on a short list of books, and then we just talk about whether we like them, whether we don't like them, all that stuff. So we're doing the one this next year is on dystopian literature, and so there's several of those I have not read. I haven't read Lois Lowry's
The Giver.
Yet. I don't read that, but I'm ready right now. I'm reading the longer one, Herman Hesse's The Glass Bead Game, and so I just finished the 50-page introduction.
Wow.
And that's interesting. But yeah, so
you should be ready then. I never read an introduction until after I've read the book.
Well, this explains.
Really? That's interesting.
This is essential because he's explaining the history up to this point.
If I get confused when I start a book, I'll go back and read it. But generally, I enjoy the introduction better after I've read the book.
Interesting. I usually will, if I don't know much about the book. I don't know. I want to know about the author and how I'm stepping into that.
Well, this is part of the book because the introduction is done by somebody in the book.
Oh, interesting.
So you have to, in order to understand what's going on, he's explaining, and so he's in the world that's in the book. It's not somebody outside the book. It's not the author who's saying, "Well, when I wrote this book, I was." No, it's written by somebody who studied the history of the glass bead game.
Okay,
there you go.
That seems like part of the book.
It is part of the book. Yeah.
Well, on to today's discussion. We are going to talk about why poetry matters. And when you think about the classical tradition, poetry is part of the very heart of it. It's how we recorded and remembered our history and our stories. And it's even part of the way we've worshipped over the history of the world. You think about the Psalms and different songs. And we saved this episode for Kathy because not many people may know this, but Kathy, you're quite the poet. I look forward every year to your Christmas poem. She presents a poem at our Christmas party that's always incredible. You include every single member of the Memoria Press team.
Which has gotten more difficult as we have grown.
Yeah. See, I greet her poetry with fear because I'm usually in there somewhere.
There always will be a reference to you, Martin. Yes, there will be.
Well, Kathy, I want to start with you, and anyone else can answer this too. I would like to hear from you. What do you think poetry offers that prose just can't?
Oh, you do not want to get me started.
Martin and I could just leave, right?
We could go on and on. Poetry offers so many things. So I really, truly believe that a person who is exposed to poetry from the time they're small, this is so important. 100 years ago, mothers sang lullabies to their babies. Mothers taught them poems. Little children grew up knowing poems. This was just naturally the way that we raised our children. And people were more literate. Being introduced to the rhyme, the flow of all of those poems prepares us for phonics. I truly believe that. It prepares us for phonics. It helps us to love words. It helps us to be comfortable with words. And we just step into that. And I don't want to say studies have shown, but studies have shown that children who are exposed to these things earlier in life, 2-3 years of age, you begin with this. A. Milne, all of his poems. When We Are Six, that book. We Are Six and When We Were Very Young, whatever. They are great little poems for children. Robert Louis Stevenson, all of those things. They step us into rhyme and rhythm and words, and we are comfortable with words. And what is the thing that's lacking in our society? What is the thing that we push against? Our vocabulary is becoming smaller. Poems grow our vocabulary. There are just so many things about poetry. Besides the fact of lightheartedness, like I have a list here. I too have a talk on poetry, Martin. And it is also called Why Poetry Matters.
Oh.
I think mine was first.
And so,
so petty, Martin.
He is. We're going on. But, here, poetry for humor. You've got Lewis Carroll, Walrus and the Carpenter. Hilarious, right? The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all its might. It did its very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
He's just so marvelous in every way. Jabberwocky, all the make-believe words, right? 'Twas brilliant in the slithy toes, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. What in the world? You first present that to someone who is really not used to poetry, and you say, listen to this nonsensical poem. You read the whole poem or recite it. It's better if you recite it and if you have expression. And at the end of it, you ask them what happened, and they know exactly what happened in that poem, even though it is full of foolishness. They all know the Jabberwocky. They love it. Poems about childhood, rural life, families, history, all of these things. And in that book, this is so funny because the schools division we are reading through Defense of Classical Education.
Livingston.
Yeah. And he says there in like the second chapter, he talks about how a poem changes things. So to simplify that, we take just maybe Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's The Village Blacksmith. Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, a mighty man is he. And it talks about his arms being as strong as iron bands. And it says that his hair is crisp and black and long. Now, you could write a story and say, there was a village blacksmith and he worked in the town. Or you could write a poem and you could explain it that way and you were picturing him. And you picture the children coming in and watching him work. And it's completely different when it's expressed in a poem. So those are my words. Take it away.
Who's looking at me? There's something about, some like Aristotle would say that anything that is real has form and matter. It has a structure and it has content. And everything that exists has to have those two elements. If you don't have one, you don't have any. If something's completely structureless, it's nothing. If something is completely contentless, it's nothing. But you put those two things together and you get something real. And so in poetry, it's words, it's content, and form. It's got structure and a very explicit structure. And this is, I think, I just kind of thought of this, why in spells and incantations, they're put in verse. Because it gives their words a reality that makes things happen, and at least, theoretically, right? And so a set of words in a structure, particularly there's several different kinds of structure in poetry, but one is rhyme. The predominant one is rhyme. You give these words a reality that they wouldn't otherwise have, right? And that structure is often the thing, because you have that sort of bouncy structure in a nonsense verse or a children's poem, right? But the structure can also imply something maybe darker, something more serious. And it's when you have, and I think the trick of poetry is having the structure match what the poem is saying in the words. The best poems are the ones that are, those two things are most closely allied. And so I think, and if you don't understand poetry, you're really missing out on powerful words because they're put with a kind of structure that makes them really just jump out. And I think it's why, in terms of memorization of words, that structure that a poem has really aids in the process of memorization.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to bring it to the classroom, Tanya, on this podcast, you talk a lot about time on task. That's one of our North Stars. Is this task and the time we're putting into it the best use of our time? When it comes to memorizing anything, that takes a lot of time. So I think about the parent who says, I need to get in math facts, Latin vocab, and they might be wondering, is the time that it takes really worth it? What would you say when it comes to the task of memory work for poetry that we ask our students to do? Because we do in our curriculum. We do have poetry.
We do, and we do several poems a year, but we're mainly memorizing scripture. It's a lot of script, like a scripture verse every week. But then we do add several poems to it. And really, I guess in K-2, they just memorize some really simple things. But really, first grade, I think, is Froggies Went to School. And it's just, they just love it. And they love the cadence of it. And they love, it helps them to learn how to stand up straight and actually recite. We start working on that very young. And then we only do 3 or 4 poems each year from then on. And then, they could memorize a soliloquy from Shakespeare when they get into high school. They memorize Dante's First Canto. So we do think it is valuable because it places those things at their command. It places beauty and truth in a beautiful way, verses just prettier than prose, into their permanent memories. And hopefully they've got it to call upon. And we try to choose poems that are, K-2 is fun poems. Like when we do Ferdinand, we do poems about cows. But after that, the poems really are like Mr. Mint To or Tired Tim. And when they do those, then you can always allude to them later. Like if you are told to clean up your room and you don't do it, then, if the parent just says, Mr. Mint To, the student knows exactly what that means. And you can do that so much better with just a short little poem than with a story will do the same thing, but it's just more crisp.
It connects. Anytime you can connect together different senses, it helps in memorization. So that really... poem connects it up with sound.
Yes.
And that rhythmic
It's
aspect
almost like music.
Yes.
It is.
It is
like
so related.
Right.
And what are the 2 things we see lacking in education? We see poetry lacking, music is lacking. These are things that are part of the whole person.
Absolutely.
And I just so firmly believe that children, and then going in, to the later years, should be comfortable with poems. It should not be an unusual thing. It should be part of their lives. To raise really literate students, we want them to understand poetry.
Yes.
It really feeds into literacy. When you look at the history of our country, you look at 150 years ago, and you have these people that are people settling areas of our country in what was the known West, or, those people are very literate. And those farmers are out plowing the ground. And in the evening, they're reading Plutarch's Lives. They're reading Shakespeare. Those children are raised understanding that poetry is, it's not even like they have to say this is important. It's just so natural to them. And I think of growing up, my parents, my father was in World War II, so older parents, right? Education was different at that time. But because we had no TV and we read and talked and all of those things, I can remember my mother saying to us, if we were going somewhere, go get yourself together. You look like the wreck of the Hesperus. And we all knew the wreck of the Hesperus was a poem,
That's
Henry
right.
Wadsworth Longfellow. And, it totally made sense to us. However, I said that in a classroom several years ago, something about the wreck of the Hesperus. You look like the wreck of the Hesperus. And all the students deer in the headlights. What is she talking about?
Did you recite it?
Is that so sad? I did not recite it. I don't have it memorized. But really, that's the difference in literacy in our country. We think we know so much. And we have so much that we need to learn.
And interestingly,
Relearn, yes.
Interestingly, our children's books are full of rhyme. We start children out with rhyme. We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a bear. Those are all very much like verse. And then it's like we get afraid of it or something and we drop it. And we start reading novels and but I think part of it is that this fear that we can't understand poetry, that it is harder to understand than a story. And it can be. I mean, you have to walk. When I was teaching and my students knew the story of the Lady of Shalott because we had done King Arthur. But still, I had to walk them through that long poem because there are things, or Shakespeare, same thing. You're really preparing them for Shakespeare when you're teaching poetry in the younger years. Because they're, just to make it rhyme or to make it, to be artistic as verse is, sometimes words are switched around or used differently than we would use in conversation. And that can be scary to parents. Poetry is work. It does take work.
I think it takes less work if we have students involved in poetry all the way through.
All the way through, that's right.
They are not not intimidated.
Yes.
They're just like, okay, we'll step into this. We'll do the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah, if they do it from the very beginning, it's not strange to them.
It isn't.
And that may be, that's interesting to think about. That may be because there's a departure, that may be why we have so many, maybe people in my generation and a little bit older, that just have no context for a life with poetry in it.
So it scares us.
Right.
So there's been or maybe poetry can get a bad rap for what people think it is, just like a cathartic kind of processing or something where really the poetry you're referencing is so substantive and significant.
Yeah, they think they have this impression that it's light. It's not serious. They think
there's a lot of light
poetry,
poets.
that's not true at all, right?
And every child should write poems. Every person, every adult should. If you've not written a poem, you need to sit down and get to work on that as learning adults.
Well, that makes you really pay attention to what kind of meter you have and what kind of rhyme you have. And
it makes you think.
Because if you've just memorized poetry, you could not necessarily identify what type of a poem it is. But if you're writing poetry, you have to know that. It forces it on you.
You have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, and you read about the different poets and you learn about their lives and you learn about Emily Dickinson and you gift people books of poetry. Why are we not doing this? We should be doing this. That is a great way to encourage people to read. I just actually this week sent someone a book of Emily Dickinson poems. A niece who is young. Just put that in their lives. Make it available. This probably isn't something that people are they're not naturally going to go to Barnes & Noble and buy a book of poems. But you can walk them into that and make it available. It's just really having those things to touch and feel and have. That's why we keep a poem book, keep them around your house. Gift people with small children A.A. Milne when we were very young. Now we are 6. They're great. It's a good thing.
And if you're going to give a gift like that to somebody who's not well versed in poetry, Emily Dickinson, that's a great first one to give somebody because
Can you
she's
speak
simple,
to more of those?
straightforward.
I'd love to hear.
Yes.
What would you we might have people listening who are like, this sounds awesome. I have no idea where to
start. What poets should you start with?
I think we do very well in our curriculum when we have so much Robert Louis Stevenson, the children's poet. I mean, he really is. He was a sickly child. He remembered his childhood. He writes those poems about the land of counterpane and the boy who's sick in bed and he's playing with his toy soldiers. He is so fantastic for children.
Well,
and the beauty of childhood.
We sell that book that Joseph Pierce put together that he compiled called Poems Every Child Should Know. And I, just like we would suggest if you're not classically educated, start with your children's curriculum. I would say start with Poems Every Child Should Know. Start with children's poems. And then as you read more and more, you'll be ready for. I mean, the romantic poets, they're more difficult and more abstract and more conceptual than just a children's poem. That's where I would start.
And they're enjoyable.
They are.
It's not like,
yes.
oh, this is a silly waste of time.
Oh, no.
Not at all.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and then for more adult poems, I always think of Dickinson and Frost, Robert Frost, because it's not hard. It's very simple, straightforward poetry, and it's beautiful. I mean, what they do. So if you're an adult, I would say, in addition to just also starting, but if you don't have children, you're not teaching them. Also, just get a simple poet like Dickinson or Frost.
Yes. And of course, you have the American poet Longfellow, who I mean Hiawatha,
Walt Whitman. I like
Walt Whitman. Yes, oh Captain, my Captain. I mean, you read that, you explain the history of that poem, and then read it to someone or recite it to someone. That is such a poem of sadness and. I mean,
it's like a eulogy.
It is yes, I agree. Very much. Yeah.
And what's coming to mind is this would be really fun to do with a book club, to have a discussion about what, because it's almost like as you're describing the effort, but the reward of poetry, it's kind of like, this is going to sound weird, but like a hard candy, like you savor it to the very end, but you kind of have to work for it. Poems are kind of similar, right? It's like you get in there and you know that it's going to take a while, but you're ready for the reward and the journey along the way. It would be wonderful. I'm thinking my book club to choose for next month's book. A book of poetry. You could hear what strikes different people, why this was rewarding or this was confusing. I think that would be fun to do in a group.
Would be. Yeah. It would be. And it would really help encourage, like we can understand this.
Yeah. And I think poems that would be from maybe age 2 through age 15, they're easy. You fall into them. You begin to know the poet. You read about Emily Dickinson's life and you picture her dressed in white and writing her poems and just being so in this place of solitude, and you just wonder all the things about her and you just get to know them. Or Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I say that because he's a favorite of mine. He's an American poet. The Children's Hour, so many of his poems are comforting. He had a great view of life. He loved it. He was a good man. He was a very good man. When you know the history of some of the poets, for instance, Gerard Manley Hopkins, as I read about his life and then I read his poems, they are so much more, they mean so much more when you know about the writer. Sure. I just feel, even in the simplest sense, people used to teach their children about language through poetry. And what is the thing? We need words. We need to feel comfortable with words. This is what we do. This is important for civil discourse, for discussing with people, right? So when I was a child, which I feel kind of odd saying that, because have we reached that age where we're going to say when I was a child?
Yeah, I'm afraid I guess we have. 3 of us at this table have.
Yes. My mother, from a immigrant family, grew up with Norwegian parents who spoke Norwegian, but language was important. So you're always teaching language skills. A flea and a fly and a flew were in prison, so what could they do? Said the flea let us fly, said the fly let us flee, so we flew through a flaw in the flue. We grew up with that.
Well, and I wonder, is that...
That's playing with words. That's using words.
Even
that's
just
understanding
being able
words.
to get those words off your tongue.
Well, right. And it's quite complex in terms of what your brain is having to picture.
Yes.
And it's also maybe something, I don't know who that wrote that poem, but I wonder if it was somebody whose primary language was another language, because it's easier to see the funny things about another language if you don't speak it yourself.
In this day, people don't even know what a flu is. Many people.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But when you use poetry in that way, you walk your children, your students, into loving words and playing with words.
Yeah.
And we need to be comfortable with doing that. So poetry has so much. It's not just reading the poem, oh, isn't that beautiful? But there's so much more that it's pouring into us.
And particularly when you start, don't you think it's important to learn poetry that is in the traditional forms? Because a lot of poetry, now is blank verse
Yes.
or free verse, which is less structured. And that has become more and more popular in our poetry. And my theory is because although we still believe in physical order, we don't believe in metaphysical and spiritual order. And this popularity of blank and free verse, which, either doesn't have meter or doesn't have rhyme or both,
Right.
It to me sort of reflects this sort of postmodernist view of things. And so I think there's something subliminal.
I love that you said all of that. Those were all of
Mark
the
your
words I would
calendar.
want to say and just be like, should I really put that out there? But you did.
Yeah,
Leave it to Martin.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of philosophical
It is.
insight about poetry that are the fact that we think that it's important to put words in a very structured kind of thing is an implication of what we think about the moral and spiritual world, that they are ordered in some way. And
Yes.
and this order in the language we use is a reflection of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And our value of beauty. I mean, there
Yes.
are ways to say beautiful things that are much more compelling in poetry.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
think
structured
about-
poetry is more like a Raphael painting, and unstructured poetry is an abstract painting where they've just thrown paint on there and call it art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think, too, that it's really important to read poetry aloud.
Mhm.
That I think that helps a lot. And it really does help students to read poetry aloud and to learn how to read verse aloud,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a skill as well.
Yes.
And they're all different kinds of, when I was teaching, I don't know why I did this, but Cheryl loved The Highwayman.
The highwayman came riding. Yeah, that's
yes,
great.
and it's such a tragic, awful story.
It is.
But a couple of so I introduced it and we talked about it, and a couple of my girl students memorized the entire thing and recited it in front of the class, and it was like Anne of Green Gables recitation. It was so dramatic, and I just read in Anne this morning. I just read the part where they had their first little concert series, and she had recited, and then they were writing stories, and she was telling Marilla how wonderful it was that all of their stories ended with lots of death and
She was very
tragedy.
dramatic. Yeah.
Yes, and those are the best stories, the ones that make you cry, and that's what poetry does for students.
Yeah.
If The Highwayman, that's a little bit.
Well, it
was
also
a little
goes to
bit
my
much.
point, because the poetry that's about bad things, that, evil is fundamentally a threat to the order of the universe, is really what it is. And so if you take evil events and you shape them into some sort of form, it's almost like even this has some kind of meaning. I mean, that's what.
You think about the Psalms of Lament.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Like, isn't that the majority? I mean, yeah, some of those even are.
Yeah. I mean,
what we've.
I have an article on this actually, on how every great disaster has produced great poetry. Because
Oh,
I think it's our
totally believe
attempt to
that.
make
Oh,
sense.
yes.
It's part of
Oh,
our attempt to
yes.
make sense out of it.
Uh-huh. And thinking of The Highwayman, if someone told you the story, they would tell you the story.
Right.
But when you read the poem
Oh.
and you got into when he's riding his horse and it says that rhythm of the highwayman came riding,
Yep.
riding. You're on the horse and you're riding. Like the way it's written is
Yes,
amazing.
and those sixth grade
Absorbing.
girls standing up there doing it was just,
Mhm.
it was really beautiful. But it was a lot. It was a lot, but they chose to do it. They loved it, and they did it with dramatic effect. Yes, because you could also just read it as just a chant as well. So it is important how you read poetry. I mean, it's got to be expressive. And maybe reading poetry for students, it's easier to be expressive than just reading a story or reading, a novel aloud.
Yeah.
Because of the meter, it really does force that expression.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Are you convinced? Do you
There's
feel
so
as
much
if
to
you
say
need
about
to
it.
rush out and buy some poetry?
I feel
do.
like when we go to the Memoria Press book group tomorrow night, that you
Anne.
should go with us.
Oh,
You've read Anne of Green Gables, and you need to say
yes.
you all
She's
need to do a book
delightful.
of poetry next.
Oh, okay. Apply pressure.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That I can do.
Yes. I know.
I can attest that that's what she.
This has been wonderful. And listeners, we'd love to hear from you. If you pick up a book of poetry, email the podcast inbox. We want to hear about it. I'd love to hear people's feedback on what the poems they're reading.
Somebody just sent me a book recommendation, which I am just always so thrilled to get. And so I would love, everybody knows what I like now. And I've loved the unselected journals of Emma M. Lyon. You should look at those.
Really?
Oh my gosh, they
Well,
are
I read
so
The Father's
good.
Tale because of me.
We
We were together that
She read The
week, and
Father's
she was
Tale.
trudging through.
Giant.
Yeah. So
Well, it's not because of
Yeah.
me. It's because of Marianne
Yeah,
and Marie at HLS
That's what
Orlando.
happens.
Yes,
this
and
person,
it
that
just-
person, that
yes,
person.
So I love it. So I would love to have poetry recommendations
Me too.
as well.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
So send them in.
Yeah.
Send them to us.
The email you can send those to is podcast@memoriapress.com. We'll take your poetry recommendations and any questions, anything you've got. And that's actually a good segue into saying soon we're going to do another mailbag episode. So please send us your questions. But that's for next time. For now, Kathy, thank you for joining us. I feel like I've got my homework. I'm going to do some poetry. And thank you guys too for being here. Thank you for joining us. We will be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.
We're going to
Okay.
figure that out
Okay.
live on camera.
Wow. Showdown of the poets. Love it.